I'm pleased to have you all here to have a sort of hopefully a fun and provocative and informative discussion about what it's like to work in tech, what it's like to be in tech. This is the third of our Innovators in Industry series. So hopefully you got a chance to catch the one last week, which was really focused on mobility and maybe a subset of mobility with a focus on autonomy. This week, we're going to talk about the computing revolution, which is really code for tech. And then next week's, which will prove, hopefully be as equally as exciting, or expected to be equally as exciting, is focused on entrepreneurship and innovation. So let's get started. We have a really distinguished panel. Christine Roberts. Christine, if you could raise your hand. Hi, Christine. She's the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Software and Services Solutions at Poly. We have Stuart Pann, who is Senior Vice President at Intel. Hi, Stu. We have Dianne Marsh, who's Director of Device and Content Security at Netflix. Dianne, you want to give a wave? Hi, Dianne. And I'm Dennis Livesay. I'm the Dean of the College, Dave House, Dean of the College of Computing. Most of the folks on the panel have been here far longer than I have. I've only been here at Michigan Tech since February. And I skipped over Austin Noronha, who will be joining us in a second. He's Managing Director of the Sony Innovation Fund, which is basically a venture capital firm within Sony. And here's Austin as we speak. All right. So we have everyone. And I'll start off by saying Michigan Tech is well known by students, parents, and alumni and others for the return on investment. This is a really, really good investment for students. It pays off in the mid and long term. And the key to that ROI is really, we want to make sure when you leave here that you are industry ready. And industry ready means a lot of different things. But we want to make sure that when you leave here, you have the skills and aptitude and the courage to start being revenue positive for whomever you work for, in the first week. And we do that through a variety of things. We do it by giving students lots of opportunity for experiential work through large co-op and intern programs, undergraduate research. Of course, we have enterprise, which is pretty unique to Michigan Tech. We also do a good job of connecting you to employers. This is a great example of that. We have one of the nation's largest job fairs, which is sort of doubly impressive when you think about how remote we are. All those companies come here to have access to you. And so tonight is just, again, part of that. We want to connect you to thought leaders and leaders in the industry and let you hear from them. And we're going to try to keep it fun. We're going to try to keep it from being too dry, too didactic. So every now and then we're going to throw in some really, really important questions, like the one we're going to start off with, which is sort of rapid fire. We'll go around the room. And tonight, the first really important question is, what is one destination in the Keweenaw Peninsula that every MTU student should visit? And before we go around the room, I promise we're going to then get to some technical stuff, but we're going to sort of punctuate our discussion with some sort of fun short answers. And Dianne, I see you first in my matrix. I'll ask you.
I think if you're there in the summer, this is a great place to go. Lac La Belle has the most clear water that I've ever seen. It's just amazingly gorgeous. It's cold, but you can look down and see all the way to the bottom. It's just gorgeous. I definitely recommend going up to check out Lac La Belle.
Given that I'm new, I'm writing that one down so I can see it myself. All right, Austin, I see you next. Where should students visit?
Yeah, if you're into outdoor stuff, nature, which I was into, Isle Royale is a place. I would still go with family once again, Isle Royale.
Excellent. Stu.
Well, I know Michigan Tech is famed for Mount Ripley, which is where I used to spend a lot of my winters, but I think climbing up there at the top of the hill in the summertime and taking a look out over peninsula is just spectacular. So I would definitely recommend climbing up Ripley in the summertime. It's not that hard to
Absolutely.
climb.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I did that this summer. It was gorgeous. And Christine.
Probably my first choice would be Canyon Falls, which is just about 40 minutes outside of town and is just absolutely beautiful. And there's trails that weave through and tons of places to get in and swim and see the waterfalls. I really wish I'd visited the library when I was at Michigan Tech. I heard that's a beautiful building. So it's a joke.
Yeah,
It's a
I
joke.
get it.
Yeah.
It's good. All right. All right. So let's get into it. Thank you, guys. I took some notes, including the library, which I'm looking out at right out my window here. And we tossed around how to frame this first question. And the way I wanted to frame it is a way that almost none of you in the audience are probably going to understand. So there was a movie a long time ago, back in the early 80s, I think it was the early 80s, called The Graduate. And Dustin Hoffman was the graduate, and he got a piece of sort of unsolicited advice for this new, exciting future industry that he should be moving into, which is plastics. And so if you Google plastics and Graduate, you're going to read everything you need to know about that. And what I want to ask the group is, what is sort of the 2021 equivalent of plastics? We know it's tech, but really within the tech space, where would you encourage your son or your nephew or Dustin Hoffman to be focused on? Stu, I'm gonna throw this out to you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm a little biased, but I would say semiconductors are the new plastic. And in fact, your entire family, I'm willing to bet, knows there's a chip shortage in the United States and around the world. So something that people didn't know about 5-10 years ago, they certainly know today. And I think that's going to remain that way with the electrification of cars, with the PC TAM now being almost 1 million units a day, with phones still running at 1.6 billion a year, with work on the edge to make our lives more energy efficient. I think there's no lack of opportunity, and we benchmark the semiconductor industry to be $500 billion. This year, we expect it to go to $1 trillion by the end of the decade, and we're certainly investing that way. So I believe semiconductors are the new plastics.
And so for the audience, is that electrical engineering, or is it computer engineering, or is there room for computer science as well? I mean,
I think there's room for all of them. And in fact, one of the things that tech does really well is it teaches you how to work at a bench. Michigan will give you a great theoretical kind of background. I did my MBA at Michigan, so no slam against my alma mater. But when you go to tech, you learn how to build stuff. And having that practical knowledge of how to go to a bench, how to use, voltmeters, oscilloscopes, whatever you need to do, and understanding how things are built, I think are more important than ever, because that gives you the grounding you need to, I think, be successful in this world. And this is the first graduating class that really is post-pandemic. So they're not going to be able to, you as students are not going to be able to go reach out to your peers and be next to them all the time. And you're going to have to do a lot of self-starting. And that wasn't true when I graduated. So I think the practical knowledge you gain at tech will be absolutely be able to be leveraged into being revenue positive right away for your employer, to borrow Dennis's phrase. So I think you're in a great spot, whether you're an electrical engineer, computer science, you still have to take some level of engineering classes. You'll get a good grounding there, how to be practical and how to build things. And I think that's what's so exciting about being a tech grad.
Can I add a different answer?
Please do. Yes, go for it.
So my degree's in computer science, and I feel like the solid foundations I got at Michigan Tech about understanding the discipline of computer science have served me well over my 35 years in this career, where I've been able to actually change the domains that I focus on through my career. And so this flexibility of being able to work in everything from automotive to genomics to now entertainment has really let me not only find those interesting applications throughout my career, but also kept it fresh for me. And so I think that the variety, for me at least, comes from the domains I've been able to apply myself to using the solid foundations that Michigan Tech gave me.
Excellent. Thank you. Christine or Austin, would you want to weigh in on this one?
I think the fundamentals, the basic knowledge that you gain in school is very, very important. And as Dianne said, you can shift over to different industries, particularly in Silicon Valley. There are folks who are coming from chemical engineering, from chemistry, doing stuff in EV and all kinds of different domains. But banking on what Stu also said, I think some practical knowledge is also very important. Then you can just hit the ground running. And if you get a chance to go do some internships, paid or unpaid, actually, even if it's unpaid, just go do it. I would just encourage doing that because that really helps you to build up kind of a real experience in the industry to go into a job knowing what to do at the right time.
Excellent. Christine, the next question's for you. And so we're going to move on to the next one. We talk a lot about digital transformation here at Michigan Tech, and it's a phrase that we hear. You can't shake a stick at a Wall Street Journal without reading about it or something along those lines. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? What does it mean in industry? What is it? And what should we be thinking about it?
Yeah,
How should we be thinking about it?
Turns out you can't shake a stick in industry either without hitting that phrase as well. And at a really high level, it's the integration of technology to fundamentally change how you're serving your customers. And that's just kind of a definition version of it. But it's, I've come at digital transformation from two different directions. My position before this was in a software startup. And by the way, I'm a mechanical engineer by education. I joke with Dr. Pettibon that they should probably revoke that at this point. But my last position before this was at a software startup, and the digital transformation I saw there was a company that was born in the cloud, SaaS built, as technological and bleeding edge as you could possibly get. But they had not implemented the systems and software that they needed to be able to scale very, very, very quickly as we grew and went through the roof. And that was at Twilio. Compare and contrast that with I'm at Poly, and Poly is a combination of two very, very, I'll say, established is the politically correct term, but very old companies. And we're facing the other side of it, where the systems and software that these companies put in 10, 15 years ago are completely almost obsolete at this point. And so digital transformation is figuring out basically what those enablers are going to be in order to allow you to serve your customers more effectively, more efficiently, and with consistency and accuracy. So that's the software side of it, I would say. The people side of it is they need people to lead those digital transformations. They need people to understand where things are going and what you're not only what you need today, but what you're going to need 2, 3, 5 years down the road, and be able to drive those initiatives and contribute to those initiatives. Because candidly, the tools are only as good as the total system and experience you put in place.
So that mindset or that culture issue, right, of being able to be nimble and flexible enough to adjust to new ways of doing business, in some cases, whole new ways of doing business. Yeah. How do we resolve that? And I'm going to toss this to the group, but then I'm going to sort of follow up with a question to Dianne, because where she works is particularly well known for that nimbleness.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in and then throw it to Dianne. But, how do you do that? It's interesting because I actually think computer science is one of the best places to live and learn that, because if you've studied Agile at all, Agile is not a thing and it's not a stagnant thing. Agile is basically figuring out how to be more effective and more efficient throughout, basically whatever you're working on. And so, it's a culture. And I think, by the way, tech prepares students very, very well for that. But it really is not being satisfied with the status quo and always looking for better ways to serve your customers. But yeah, I also worked with Dianne for a bit at Netflix, so her years of experience there certainly have lent itself to this question. So go for it, Dianne.
Did you have a specific question that you wanted me to answer, Dennis?
So it was more just, how do you, how do you promote? How can people embrace? What is it like to live in that culture of reinvention? And how do you prepare people to be that nimble and flexible? Because, change is bad and everyone hates change. And the company that you work for does it over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think the underpinning of that is that we have to get comfortable with failure, and that we have to embrace failure, because the vast majority of things that we're going to try on all of you in your Netflix client, just trying to make it work great for you, the vast majority of things are not going to work. And they are not going to be embraced by all of you. And so figuring out how to feel comfortable with, I'm going to try this thing and I can't get too attached to it because it's probably not going to work. And then I'm going to try something else. And just getting comfortable with that iterative approach to, let's try this, and not feeling really attached to the outcome is, I think, a critical element of growing and embracing, that change over time.
That sounds pretty simple, but I know it's really, really difficult. I mean, is it harder for the younger folks? Is it harder for the people who've been there longer? I mean, who really struggles with that, accepting failure and then not knowing what the future is going to be?
Yeah, I don't think it's a younger versus older thing. I think it's a personality thing. And so one of the things I look for when I'm talking to prospective candidates is, will they feel comfortable in this environment of constant change? Will they feel comfortable in this environment of failure? Or will they constantly feel stressed by it? And if you're going to feel stressed by it, don't, please find something else to do, because you spend too much time at your job to be in a place where you're not enjoying yourself. Whereas, thinking this constant improvement is, hey, there's a way for me to do something differently, and I'm just going to embrace that, is if that's part of the way that you process things, then I think you're going to have a lot of fun and you're not going to get bored.
Excellent. So it's time for one of our rapid fire questions. This one, we're going to sort of focus on a what if. So if you were able to take a class right now, and you had all the time in the world to take the class, what would you take right now in the here and now? A class on, and it could be, something related to what you do at work, or it could be something for fun or cultural, whatever you want. Austin, what would you be taking right now?
Something in health informatics. There's so much stuff going on in health. We'd love to go back and do some more. I just hear from startups these days. I wish I could do something myself, but yeah, genomics area, that could be interesting.
Good answer. That's my bailiwick. Great answer. Christine.
Anything. I would probably be taking a pasta making class in the middle of Italy.
Perfect. Wonderful.
But
all
right
right.
behind that would be something
good.
on biomechanical engineering. Probably.
Biomechanical. Okay. Good. Stu.
I'd probably take a class in optics because right now we're bringing in some very expensive machines in our factory that cost north of $200 million a piece. And they're all, at the end of the day, silicon is made with cameras, or basically photographing patterns on pieces of silicon. And I'd like to be able to understand the physics when our PhDs talk to me and say, this machine costs a lot of money. And I was asked, why does it cost so much money? And they try and explain it, and I don't understand. So I'd love to understand some of the physics behind all this a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. All right. Dianne.
My daughter's a college student, and she's taking a class this semester in bioethics. And I would just love to take this bioethics class. I think it would be fascinating.
Agreed. Okay, excellent. All right, so that was fun. I didn't. No one asked me, but I think if I was going to be taking a class, it would probably be in the area of history. It's just because this is for fun. I love history. I took way too much chemistry when I was a student. Didn't take nearly enough gen eds, just the bare minimum, and wish I would have taken more. And so go back and correct that. All right, Austin. This question's for you. So, we have some of the biggest, most successful companies in tech, and meaning the world here in this group. But a lot of what's happening, the most exciting stuff is happening in very small startups, and some cases garage companies, some cases they're past that and they're into the VC space. You've worked with these folks. What's in the secret sauce for the successful startups? What advice should you be giving people to be thinking about if that's the path they want to take?
I think first I always put the team, actually, because I'll tell you why. There's always the market need and there's the market timing. And a lot of times, me personally too, the timing wasn't right. Market need was there, timing wasn't right to be able to do it. But if you have the right team and the support of VCs who can give you some funding, you can always pivot and do the plan B to plan C to plan D and reach the right thing. Even Google, if they're gone with their original business plan, wouldn't have been Google today. It was because they pivoted. That's where they are today. So I would put it as the team. If you have the right team and they're addressing the right market needs at the right time, I think it's a perfect fit. Regarding how we can start looking at Michigan Tech as a hub, before that, I wanted to kind of get back to some of the transformation stuff that you talked about. Every industry is being transformed, and I'm saying it's the entrepreneurs coming from the outside. So if you look at large companies like mine or Netflix and other companies, innovating always inside is always a challenge, because there's disrupting your current business is always a challenge. But it's the entrepreneurs coming from outside. Even age-old industries like agriculture are being transformed tremendously, and it's a lot of it is coming from a lot of the entrepreneurs. And it's not necessarily it's the ag companies that are doing it, or people who have been in the agriculture business. It's just people sitting outside who are looking at the needs and transforming that. So there's transformation coming from all sides in all industries, and a bunch of that is coming from startups who have less fear to fail, and they're okay to fail as long as someone is supporting them, and at least initially, in the ideas.
So that sort of sparks a follow-up. When we think about this convergence of computing and data and connectivity with X, right? And so X, in your example, was agriculture, and my background is in bioinformatics, so it's very traditional structural biology combined with computing. There's a lot of digital transformation that's disrupting every discipline. Criminal justice is a data-driven discipline at this point. A lot of the humanities are becoming data-driven disciplines. The biggest big data user at my last institution was a classically trained Shakespearean scholar who had a body of work that he knew was done by Shakespeare, and a body of work that he knew was not done by Shakespeare, and a body of work in the middle he was trying to assign attribution to using machine learning. What is the most unexpected or novel or exciting areas of digital disruption, digital transformation that you see or you follow, or that you're thinking about? And this is sort of to the whole group here, so anyone can jump in.
I think I'll start. I think for Intel, it's photonics, and I know that's surprising for the company that was so involved in doing DRAM and CPUs, but we're finding out that putting signals through copper is just too slow. And if we're trying to get to zettabyte kind of level computing, we're going to need to do it through photonics. So some of the most fascinating things we're doing right now are how fast can we drive things, and putting guided waveguides on boards and figuring out how to transmit light around boards. It's fascinating stuff, because we're actually starting to worry about how fast is light and can we take advantage of it. And as advanced as computing we see today, it's nothing compared to what we'll do when this thing is enabled with optical computing.
Great answer. Exciting. Anyone else?
I think this. Go ahead, Austin. I'll go after you.
No, I think we're looking disruptions, all kinds of spaces. We have made investments in food tech. It's just a fact, and it's not just necessarily robots making food, but it's also the chemistry of how food is being made. We have made investments in companies for smell. So because a lot of the food taste comes from also smell. So it's kind of related. We're looking at food tech, we're looking at the fintech, the healthcare, those are standard ones. But in the new areas, one of the big areas we're looking at is skincare. It's amazing the billions and billions of dollars being spent in beauty tech. And now we look at using standard imaging technology to kind of measure certain factors in skin, because skin is one of the, I think it's the largest organ of human beings, is be able to see how we can develop better formulations that can be very personalized to certain people's needs. So innovations of all these new areas are being disrupted, and we continue to look at those areas. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was thinking that this is a huge change in terms of disruption. We're able to bring people from everywhere into our homes for all kinds of reasons, for entertainment, for information, learning like this. And one of the things I'm really enjoying is I don't know if democratization is the right word, the visibility into what goes on in the court system, and being able to just watch, what's going on, and not have to take somebody else's word for, what happens in our legal system is super fascinating to me. And so I vote for this.
Yeah. Christine?
We're doing a lot of research into how all of these devices that are aware can help us be more effective and efficient and be better communicators and leverage all of the skill sets that the team brings to the table, and just thinking about how to do that in a way that's not scary or intrusive, but in a way that's very, very helpful. And you can imagine, so for example, the sensors I have on this camera know what the air quality is like right in this room right now. And so when you think about things like pandemics, and when you think about things like things that get emitted from furniture and things like that, having a camera in the room also means that you have sensors in the room that can do way more than just display video. So we're doing a lot of research into that, and how we make this experience better, but also more effective and more efficient.
Excellent. So one of the things, a little shameless plug. So when we think about convergence, Austin mentioned fintech, and we've touched on, or brought up once or twice, data science, and which, when in my mind, data science is AI and ML, and I know that's a narrow, incomplete view, but we do a lot of AI and ML here. One of the things that we're doing here is we're thinking about our next building on campus, and the next building on campus, which would be called the Center for Convergence and Innovation, would be a co-location of our College of Business as well as the College of Computing, because we're trying to promote the same sorts of collisions and interactions and cross-fertilization that we're talking about here. So it's something that we're really excited about and just announced here on campus recently. All right, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and one, I'll just sort of read it. What is something students can do outside of the base curriculum which would make them stand out to employers or grad schools? And so, Austin, you mentioned internships and co-ops. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? And I'll give you first bite at it, then we'll toss it out to the rest of the group.
I think given COVID, you physically don't have to be in any place to be participating in any kind of projects or internships. There are a lot of these, particularly these folks, I'll just speak for the entrepreneur side of Sony. I don't do much on the business side, so I can't speak much there. It's been 20 years since I was working for a business group. So I would suggest, taking some of these online courses. There's some amazing courses out there. A lot of these accelerators, incubators offer a lot of courses. There's a great way to meet potential partners there, potential co-founders there. There's a great way to be mentored there, and they're very reasonable pricing. So I would say if you have some spare time, even while you're at tech, just do it. A lot of them are also asynchronous, so you don't need to be, participating in real time.
So this is, I'm not the first to say it, but I say it a lot. this is the most disruptive time in higher ed since the Morrill Act created the land grants. And a lot of that is, MOOCs, so massively online courses, the democratization, to use Diane's word, of education and offerings, and a focus on skills and competencies that maybe we've not had in the past. So yeah, great advice. Anyone else want to sort of weigh in and give students some advice?
I would like to, having been an interviewer up on the tech campus for several years, I think it's really important when you come into these discussions, do your homework. So many times, I've met with students who really didn't have an idea of what the company I work for was about or what they want to do. And I think you're at you have time to learn the industries that you'd like to get into and learn the companies you want to talk to, and try and look at it from their eyes, what they're going through, their challenges. And if you do that, I think the interviewer will walk away with the impression that, hey, this person did their homework, versus the ones who come in and say, oh, tell me about Intel, or tell me about whatever company. If you're going to take the time, if you're going to take your time and the time of the interviewer, get prepared for it. And I think if you do that, that gives you surprisingly a leg up. I mean, Woody Allen has an old quote where he says, half of life is just showing up. I mean, show up and be prepared, and you'll have a much better conversation, probably a better outcome.
All right.
I'll just build on that. I think Stu is spot on, but I'll also say, if you can target what you want to do. I find it hard to interview folks who say, well, I'll do everything. I'll do anything. I like everything. And so, find the thing. It doesn't have to be the thing that you do for the rest of your career. Just find the thing that you're most passionate about right now and go for that and target that, because that also comes through in an interview. And so just, to Stu's point, showing up prepared, knowing what you're interviewing for, but also then targeting that and having specific reasons on why you're interested in it and why it's something you want to do at this point in your education.
Excellent. All great advice. Diane, you want to add anything to this?
Sure. I think, show your multidimensional self. Everyone that's interviewing for the job that you're competing for probably comes with some of the same credentials that you do, the same experience that you have. But good decision-making comes from a wealth of experience beyond that book smartness, beyond those classes that you took in your major, thinking about other majors and how classes that you took in other subjects might contribute to a broader thought pattern. Exposing that multidimensional self, I think, is super important to the interviewer, because it shows them that you can think on your feet and that you're going to bring a lot to the role.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, it's time for one of our serious questions. Some of you get back to Houghton and the area frequently. Some of you haven't been back in a while. But the same question to both groups. When you're here or when you come back, what restaurant is a must stop in at? Diane, we'll pick back up with you.
I can't choose. I'm going to give you one restaurant in Houghton and one in Eagle River. So in Houghton, the Ambassador, hands down, get a sub. I already told Dennis this in one of the first times we talked. I hope he comes back with a report, because I'd love to hear about it.
It was fantastic.
And if you're in Eagle River, Fitzgerald's is beautiful on the lake. It's gorgeous. Enjoy it.
Two great answers, and you're right. You told me about the Ambassador. I only had pizza there, and I went back the next time and got a sub, and it was amazing. Stu, how about you?
I'd have to go back and get pizza at the library.
Yeah.
Hands down. I mean, it's a sentimental favorite, and the pizza's pretty good too.
I got here before my family did, and I was here for a couple months before they were here, and I was at the library way too often, eating way too much pizza. It's really good. Austin.
So I went to school way back. I'm not sure among all these folks here, back in 85 to 87. That was my first trip to Michigan from way back from India. So a lot of new things out there. I liked the doghouse. That was lovely. I was a grad student, by the way. So that was a great place. The pickled eggs, the drinks. It was open till 2 p.m., 2 a.m. that I remember. The other place when Christine said about the library, I thought about the restaurant library,
I know.
which is very good library.
No, I
And the reason I like the
spent plenty of
library
time
was,
there.
it was hilarious. That place served ethnic food, one day Chinese, the other day some other food. It's like over the week because they didn't have any other location there. So they cycled through their menus over the week. That was good. So I would say the library and the doghouse. I'm not sure. Is the doghouse still around?
Not
Oh,
that I
yeah.
know of, but the
It
library
is.
is like we were saying, and it's good. They don't do that changing the cuisine each day anymore, but their pizza is good and they have some really good entrees. Christine,
So-
how about you?
Dennis, the doghouse is alive and well, and the pickled
Oh,
eggs are also alive and
It is,
well.
okay, so I'm learning something. Where's this at?
It's probably called the Douglas House.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay,
it's a
so
historic-
I'm revealing being the new guy, all right.
I was like, how? Okay, but
Yeah. Okay, so I have been there then, yeah.
there you go. So I would argue with Austin that the best pickled egg is the B&B, but I'm also very, very partial to the Ambassador. So I had a roommate in college that waitress there for 4 years. So we spent a lot of quality time in the Ambassador. And you can still get garlic bread with a side of ranch, like all good Midwesterners. So
All right,
it's true.
okay, that's awesome. Okay, so I learned something. I feel good. All right. Now let's pivot back to our discussion. And one of the challenges that we all know right now in the pandemic is the supply chain. And it's like, what in the world is going on with why can't we get stuff? And Stu, you already mentioned issues of getting chips and delaying cars and everything else. What's going on? How what gives?
Yeah, no, it's been fascinating. I know certainly I get questions like this from my family all the time, and this is my second tour of duty. For the prior 7 years, I was the chief supply chain officer at HP, and they're obviously trying to get stuff out the door. I think there's a couple of things. One, people are spending more on durable goods than they are on services. Even post the pandemic, if you look at just in the U.S. alone, durable goods are up 35% year on year. Services are only up about 13%. So people are buying more durable goods. And there's some weird kinks in the supply chain. Actually, it's in the biggest shortage space right now in semiconductors is old technology, stuff that's been built on 90 nanometer, 180 nanometer, stuff that Intel hasn't ran for years and years, but it's still being running by TSMC. And there isn't enough machine tools in the world or clean room space in the world to build that new capacity, to build to all those automakers putting tons of electronics in their cars and electrifying them, or computing at the edge. And the world is struggling getting buildings in place and construction in place and machine tools in place just to go build more. And I expect this is going to go on through certainly the second half of next year and possibly well into 23. But it's on the new stuff. I mean, the old stuff's surprisingly, it's not on the new stuff. And then if you look at just transportation in general, Long Beach is tied up because they can't get enough sleds to put containers on. It's not the containers themselves, it's the sleds that you hook up to the trucks to get them out of the port itself. So when you stress the supply chain out this way, there's just funny kinks that come up that you never ever dreamed you'd have to worry about, and now have to be addressed and addressed quickly if we're going to unclog the supply chains here in the US and frankly around the world. This is not just a US phenomenon.
Yeah, when I moved here, we moved into our new house. Well, actually, once the family came in and we moved into our new house in June, we lived on fold-up camp furniture for about a month because there wasn't enough truck drivers to drive our stuff up from Kansas. I mean, it was weird the way things have impacted us. So your answer is it resonates with me on a tech-ish level, but also on a very sort of pragmatic, I want my bed level. Okay. So one of the issues that we talk a lot about in the tech industry is a lack of diversity. And all of us have done things to try to improve the diversity in tech. It's the right thing to do, creating a level playing ground. But I want to set that aside. And I also want to think about sort of the business case for having diverse teams. And sort of to drive this home, I'm going to sort of toss up to the group. Can you give me an example of a time that you had a problem and you're sort of, thank God we had a diverse group to explore this from different angles? Or maybe if you didn't have that diverse group and you came up with sort of a group think and ended up with a solution that turns out not to be the ideal one. So can you give some real practical examples of how diversity helped make the give you a better answer, or a lack of diversity gave you the wrong answer? And sort of, I'm tossing it up to the group.
I'll give you one just from my HP days. Computer design of PCs. As we brought more female engineers and female designers into our base, we found out that we were designing for a mostly male base. And so we started looking at PC design, saying, okay, what would a woman want in a PC? Well, what about thin and light, fashionable? We never thought about colors before. And now PCs are made multi-color, multi-use. But we think about the lightness and thinness and visual capabilities. And some of our lead female designers were very influential in challenging, if you will, the male groupthink about strong and potentially heavier machines. And I think it contributed a lot to how we looked at computer design and even printer.
Uh-oh, Stu just froze on us. All right, Stu, I'm going to, that was a great answer, thank you. And I'm going to toss it to the rest of the group.
So I'll give you both ends of, sorry, Stu, I think you're
please
back.
Go ahead. I'm sure this is something you think about at Poly too, right?
It is. So I have an example in both cases. So back when I was at Motorola forever, and we were developing phones, and we developed the first what's called always on display, right? The kind of you get to see your time and your notifications, things like that. But we were beyond stressed because we're like, this is way too intrusive and people are going to hate this. And, do we really have the right to be displaying things on the screen? And this seems completely archaic now, but we had the best and brightest and most experienced product managers and engineers and we're sitting at the table and what are we going to do about this? And how can we set this up? And two of our interns happened to be sitting at the end of the table, and they walk over and they pick up the phone and they're like, and turned it face down, and we're like, and we were it was a perfect example of wow, we just really just having their perspective was just incredibly valuable. I'll give you the other side, which is a lot of our camera developers are male. And one of the things that our cameras do in some cases is they track to the person that's talking. And we test this, obviously, all kinds of different scenarios, but apparently we did not test it with females wearing masks. And so if someone has shoulder length hair and is wearing a dark mask, it would never go to the female speaker. And that's a huge problem. That's a really, really, really big problem. And so there's simple examples, but it's just an example of if you don't have diversity, all kinds of diversity, by the way, age, go through the list, right? Global diversity, you're going to miss something. And anytime a company misses something, they miss out on what we call the available market, full stop. So that's my pitch for it.
Fantastic answer. Thank you. Dianne or Austin, you want to throw in something on this one?
I mean, Christine hit the nail on the head there. Our subscribers at Netflix don't look like Silicon Valley tech industry looks. And if we designed a product with only folks that represent that are representative of the tech industry, we would be missing all of those opportunities to engage more deeply with our subscribers. And so being able to hire product managers with great ideas about innovation and how to take the product forward that don't look like the stereotypical Silicon Valley tech industry is super important to us, and how the product moves forward. And then to your other point, it's also a global market, right? So being able to realize that we're not just designing for US folks, we're designing for people around the world. Austin, what you got?
Yeah, so I think one thing is you can design for all the folks because they're giving out the big bucks to buy the products that we make and stuff like that. But the bigger decision here, issue here is who's making those decisions, and how much do we include the folks like women and people of color in the decision-making control positions. Silicon Valley is known, particularly the VC industry is known for, who dominates there and what the issues have been there. But I think there have been more and more funds being created just focused on women founders now, which is great to see. That more and more funds being created that is focused on investing in people of color, which is great to see. Just in case in point, in my group, I do have 2 women out of 5 folks. And I don't think I would have been able to push through that concept of beauty tech that I said, because that's kind of not really something I or anyone else. But when these 2 gals got together and they could really try out things and give an opinion about it, we kind of built up a thesis around it. We haven't made any investment yet, but at least it's come up to a decision point that, hey, we should look at the space. There is good technology in there, which could be, and it's a huge market. The timing has always been right. So that's what we're looking at. So I think giving these opportunity to folks to influence decisions is seeing a lot of fruit now, particularly in the past 1 or 2 years.
Thank you all. So not only is it the right thing to do, it's the best thing a business can do is to have diverse teams to explore diverse solutions. So let's keep pushing on that. All right, we're going to address one of the questions from the audience. We talked a lot about disruption. We talked a lot about digital transformation and continuous change, continuous reinvention. And Gary asked, as a full-time professional, how do you balance managing your current work responsibilities while also identifying and growing in other ways? And so how do you stay ahead of that curve? How do you find the time of the day to do your day job, but also to make sure you're prepared for your job in a year or even further down the line? So what's your sort of your breakdown of what's going on now and what's coming?
I'll go and say, I wish I had 30 hours in the day to learn more and more stuff. Sometimes I would like to do, and sometimes I'm just forced to learn new things. So if I'm looking at a new area, and just like Christina and Stuart said, prepare before the interview, I better be prepared about this new focus area I'm looking at, because the entrepreneur, at least I want to make sure that the entrepreneur thinks that I know something. So I think it's a challenge, particularly for folks in the work environment, to balance out what you have to do on a day-to-day basis versus learning something new. And it has to be a kind of a dedicated effort to make that happen. So it's a challenge. I would love to do it. I'm always wanting to learn, but it's just balancing what you have to do on a day-to-day basis versus what to learn. So I'm not sure what's the case with you guys. Maybe you all have more time.
I have to answer. I've been associated with Intel for 4 decades now, both as a customer and as an Intel employee. I actually came out of retirement to join Pat Gelsinger to go reinvent Intel one more time. So I was doing other things while I was retired. I was playing piano, I was reading a lot, working out a lot. All those sort of went by the wayside because we're in the middle of, back to the semiconductor shortage, we're in the middle of trade policy discussions, new factories, regeneration of a great company. And so I'm putting all of my effort now, given I decided to come out of retirement, into this. But I'm probably not a good role model for the students right now because I'm at the end of my career rather than the beginning. I think, in the beginning of your career, if you really truly love what you do, you'll find ways to add to that education, right? Learning about adjacencies to your business, just expanding from your core and building on that is something I think is really useful. And it's the reason I went back to get my MBA at Michigan was to go get the business skills to complement the engineering skills that tech gives all of its students.
So let me follow up on that. And this is related to another questions in the chat. I'll admit that I lead a college of computing, but I've never had a computer class in my life. Never took a computer science class. Everything all my training is in chemistry, and everything that I know about computing and programming, which I did a lot, was self-taught. So how do you, what are your, do you have any thoughts on that balance between a didactic sort of formal education versus sort of learning as you go, exploration, following your interest? Any advice to folks as far as how to maintain that balance? Any advice for folks as far as having the courage to sort of to continually to try new things? And I know it's a poorly framed question, but sometimes even bad questions can get great answers. So I'll toss it out there.
I'll take a shot at it. I think that for me, who, I went the traditional route, bachelor's degree in computer science, master's degree in computer science. It was easy for me to have conversations that were similar to other folks. Like we could talk the same language because of that background. And when interfacing, working with other people who don't have that background, you find a way to work a little harder to make sure that you're talking about the same things. There are a variety of folks at Netflix, people without college degrees, people without degrees in computer science, people with degrees in English, for example, that are working as some of the best engineering managers I've ever worked with. And you just have to temper your conversation with your audience to understand, are they hearing me? Am I hearing them? Are we talking about the same thing? And so I think that it's an exploration all the time to figure out how to talk to other people so that you don't lean on, just the geek speak that you learned when you were in college.
Yeah, and I mentioned I started as a mechanical engineer, and I did do quite a bit of work in that area to start, and then found adjacent opportunities. So did a lot of program management, and if I got into a situation where I thought I was really going to like an opportunity and then I didn't, I gave the old college try, I guess. Give it a year and a half, 2 years. And then if I didn't find that niche, I really actively went out and looked for something else. But it was kind of what Stu said too, is it's like you find what you love and what you're passionate about, and candidly what you're building skills in and what you're good at. And then you find out, wow, I'm kind of good at that. You find that adjacent thing that gets you to that next opportunity. So I did a lot of different things that had nothing to do with mechanical engineering. And, I also have an MBA, but I shouldn't say but, and it helpful along the way, but I would just say that it really was kind of, doing well and then being noticed and then trying new things.
Excellent.
I mean, just to build on that a little bit, when I came out of tech, I joined the Intel sales force, and I was a sales guy, a sales manager for 20 years. And if somebody would tell me when I left tech that I'd wind up being the chief supply chain officer of HP, no, I can't see that. And I think, your career is unpredictable. You 10, 20 years from now, I guarantee you will be doing something you never thought of doing. And that's okay. So long you're working with the right people and the right boss, it's okay to take a risk and go with the flow a little bit. So long you have some base level understanding. I started doing operations work once I left the sales force, but I knew enough about pricing such that I was able to add value. That operations work led to supply chain officer now running planning for Intel. So it's okay not to know what you're going to do 10 or 20 years from now. Just so long you do well at what you do and you're open to different ideas and different jumping off points.
As the great philosopher Michael Jordan said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and open yourself up to new opportunities. So Stu, that the discussion around photonics was really interesting. And having spent most of my professional career hanging out with physicists is sort of doubly interesting to me. But I'm going to spin it a little bit differently, because when you started talking about photonics and other ways of transferring computing information, I started thinking about quantum computing. And quantum computing is something that I am really, I'm just sort of, I have no idea on how we should be proceeding from an educational perspective in quantum. Is it something that we should be embracing now? Is it so far off that we need to be focused on traditional computing? Does anyone have anything they want to think, any nugget of wisdom related to what our audience should be thinking about the quantum revolution and quantum computing going forward?
I don't think there's anything to really compare it against because it's so different than anything in computing today. I think you have, if you're going to embrace it, you really got to embrace it and study it, because you won't learn it with traditional programming, because there is no traditional programming for quantum computing. There aren't that many people to learn it from, and it's not widely deployed. Now, that doesn't mean at some point in time it won't be, it will be. But it requires some pretty deep knowledge to understand what's going on there. And so if you're going to commit to it. And prepare to go into multidisciplinary with mathematics, physics, engineering, because quantum computing, for it to get to mass production, we've got a long ways to go. When you're talking about running stuff, liquid nitrogen kind of temperatures. Liquid nitrogen coolers are a little hard to come by these days. So I think it's be a fascinating place, but just be aware it's going to take a little while for it to reach mass acceptance.
But tech should seriously start looking at the space, because it's going to be eons before real things happen using quantum computing. But there's tons and tons of venture investments going into it and crazy valuations. Now, how much is realistic? We don't know. A lot of the large corporations, I'm sure Intel and others are sinking in billions into it. So yeah, if tech is serious about it, I think someone in your department or someone should start looking at it to see how you can start embracing it.
All right, well, we're at the end of the hour, and I'm going to follow up with two questions. One is clearly more important than the other. What was your favorite class, or who was your favorite instructor? I'll let you figure out which question you can answer when you were here at Michigan Tech. Christine, let's start with you.
My favorite class was kinematics. And I candidly struggled through statics and dynamics, but apparently when you take those classes enough, by the time you get to kinematics, it actually starts to all make sense. So kinematics.
Struggling with statics is not something that's unique to you. Statics is a hard course.
So I hear.
Yeah. Dianne.
I had a class in programming languages, which was sort of a survey of a variety of different programming languages. And I think this was my favorite class because it really showed me that regardless of what programming language you learn in college, you can learn other programming languages. I think this is something that's kind of happening right now with, folks that have never done anything other than Java, for example. Learning a variety of different programming languages gives you an opportunity to think differently. And I think it served me well. Excellent.
Austin.
I took classes with Dr. Martha Sloan. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of her. Now you talk about diversity. It's like she was the first IEEE woman president of IEEE, which was heavily dominated by men in those years. And she used to travel a lot. So off and on, I would get calls from her to be her TA to fill in into her classes. But working with Dr. Martha Sloan was a great pleasure. Yeah. And taking her classes. Computer engineering.
Say EE 260 for introduction. So I hate to date myself, but that was, I think we were programming in 6502 assembly language, because that was the in thing back then. But it gave me a chance to understand computers at the assembly language level. And from that, I was able to work that into a job at Intel. So I kept in touch with Dr. Sloan up until she retired. And you're right, she had a way of explaining and making things clear and challenging you. And that class for me was the seminal class for me at Tech.
But there's an interesting thing about the ones that Stu is talking about. Motorola used to donate or subsidize equipment to Tech.
6800 assembly boards, right?
A few years later, Intel came along, and Intel came in and gave their Tech, and the switch between whatever I even forget what was it. Intel and Motorola were different in the way they programmed in assembly language, and the poor mechanical engineers and fourth-year mechanical engineers who had to take that class had a bad time, and I was the TA for that. So,
well, just to make this full circle for Dennis, my first mentor at Intel was Dave House.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We sponsored the chair that Dennis is now sitting in, figuratively,
and many other positions here at Michigan Tech. Been a great friend of the campus. All right, last question, this one of substance. And before we end, I want to thank the audience, and I want to thank all of you for giving us your time. It's very appreciated. I really enjoyed this conversation. And we'll end, and I do want to go around the room to hear from each of you on this one. What's your best parting advice for new employees in the tech industry? So if you had to give them one or two or brief piece of advice, what would you tell someone as they're in their first year, they're getting ready to go into their first tech job? And Christine, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I would say don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to speak up, and don't be afraid to fail fast.
Excellent. Stu.
I think for me, coming out of tech, which spends a lot of time on the bench, be mindful of how you communicate and be crisp in your communication. We're moving in such a fast-paced world that the person who can communicate the clearest gets their ideas across the table and across the board. So I think about how you communicate.
Excellent. Austin.
Yeah, so I would say the teamwork part of it, because a lot of folks, particularly these days in the past few years, have been working remotely or by themselves. But coming into a company, particularly a startup, you have to have the ability to kind of work as a team and very openly to take input from others and stuff like that. So having the ability to be open for open communication, as Stu said, and the ability to take criticism and be able to execute on that would be. And passion is the other thing. I have 3 kids all through college, and I think that's one of the most important things. If you have the passion, I think it can take you to many different places. But if the passion is not there, it's just a job, then I think it will remain to be a job for many, many years later.
Okay, I lied, because I do want to follow up on that passion. And we actually had a question from the audience as well about that. But let's hear from Christine, and we're going to do one more after this.
Dianne.
So I said Christine.
Dianne.
Sorry, Dianne.
Oh, so I think my advice is to stay curious. There are so many interesting things to do in this field, in computing. Stay curious and try to figure out what it is that evokes your passion to tie it all together. And just, you spend so much time doing your work, make sure you enjoy it.
Wonderful advice. That idea of passion. So this is the one last question. I promise this is the last one. How do you find your passion? I mean, do do you have any advice other than be curious? I mean, how would you tell your son or daughter to find what they're really passionate about?
I think when you wake up in the morning, are you looking forward to going to work? You really, is it something that really gets you going? It's not a chore. It's something I'm excited to go address, what I see today. And if you don't wake up excited, now some days you don't wake up excited, but you have to make it enjoy the days, right? Morning of a board presentation, I'm not so excited, but sometimes. But if you don't wake up excited, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And
Anyone
I would
else?
just say, try it. Just try it. You'll know, that's not try it for 3 months and then think about, but try it and you'll figure it out pretty quickly, and you'll learn a lot about yourself, and it'll change, by the way, throughout your career, what you're passionate about. But you'll start to narrow it down, and you'll start to find your path. But it really is just about, if it looks interesting and you think it's something you might want to do, then try it.
Excellent. Dianne or
I
Austin?
think it's easy enough while you're still at school, and most, assuming your parents are paying for school, to try out new courses. And back to Stu stuff, that is when you come to work, and are you excited about going into work? But in school, you can try new courses, and maybe those courses will trigger something that may change the mind or may change the major. It's kind of a little bit expensive, but at least you'll find out ahead before going into the industry a little bit more what you're passionate about. And so that's one way to find out what your passion could lead to. The other thing, and I'm not sure whether Michigan Tech does that. I know a lot of high schools here in the Bay Area do. They have a lot of these career days where parents come in from different career areas and come and speak to the students. So just like we're having the discussion now. So I think talking to folks in an area that you're passionate about, where you find out a little bit, to validate that is also very good. So if you get an opportunity to talk to someone and validate that's what you want to do. Because going to law school or going to med school and not having that passion, it's a pretty expensive decision that you could make.
Dianne, you have the last word.
Don't force it. I think if you go home tonight and you're thinking, gotta find my passion, you're not gonna find your passion. And so you have to feel it. You have to let it come upon you. And it takes a while to figure out, this, not that. Like Christine said, explore, figure out what right now this resonates, next week it might not. And so don't just throw spitballs at the wall and then give up on them, but learn a lot of different things and figure out how your unique brain puts those things together in a way that that ends up landing on you as something that you really enjoy.
Excellent. With that wise statement to end on. So Dianne, Christine, Stu, Austin, thank you. We really appreciate it. This was a really interesting and fun and maybe even provocative discussion. Audience, I encourage you to listen to next week's as well, as we'll be talking, digging down a little bit more, drilling down a bit more on entrepreneurship and innovation, and have an equally stellar panel there. And next week's host will be Dean Johnson, who is the Dean of the College of Business. So with that, we will say goodnight and see y'all.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Night.